The Naughtiest Girl is a Monitor by Enid Blyton. It was in the middle of the Christmas holidays. Christmas was over, and now Elizabeth was looking forward to going back to boarding school again. It was dull being an only child, and she missed the girls and boys at Whiteleaf School.
Mother, I do miss my school friends.
I knew you'd be lonely, so I've arranged for someone to come and keep you company.
Who?
A girl called Arabella Buckley who is going to Whiteleaf School next term. Her mother has to go to America.
Well, Whiteleaf is the best school in the world.
That's what I told her mother, and she went to see the headmistresses, Miss Bell and Miss Best.
Beauty and the Beast.
As Mrs. Buckley had to leave for America, I offered to have Arabella here.
I do hope she's a nice sort of girl.
Well, I've seen Arabella, and she was a very pretty girl with the most beautiful manners and beautifully dressed.
Oh, I don't think I like the sound of her very much.
Well, you'll see. She's coming tomorrow.
The next day, as Elizabeth watched from the window, a rather grand car drew up at the front door, and out stepped someone who looked more like a princess than a schoolgirl. Elizabeth had meant to rush down and give Arabella a hearty welcome, but somehow she didn't feel like it now. Eventually, she heard her mother calling her, so she had to go down.
Hello, Arabella.
How do you do?
I hear you're going to Whiteleaf School. That's lucky for you.
I shall be able to judge whether it is or not when I get there. I hope to goodness there are nice children there.
Of course there are. We had 1 or 2 boys who were awful, but now they're my best friends.
Did you say boys? I hate boys. I thought this was a girls' school I was going to.
It's a mixed school, girls and boys.
Ugh, boys. Dirty and untidy.
Oh, well, even the girls get dirty and untidy sometimes.
It sounds a terrible school to me. I had hoped Mother would send me to Grey Towers. The girls are treated like princesses.
At Whiteleaf, you'll be treated as what you are, a little girl like me with lots to learn. If you put on any airs there, you'll soon be sorry.
Arabella and Elizabeth did not mix well at all. There was nothing that Elizabeth liked about Arabella, and it seemed that Elizabeth was everything that Arabella most despised and hated.
I wish I wasn't going to Whiteleaf.
I'll tell you a bit about the school. Then you'll know exactly what you're in for.
All right.
At Whiteleaf, we have a head boy and a head girl, William and Rita. Then there are 12 monitors.
Whatever are they?
They are boys and girls, chosen by the whole school as leaders. I have been chosen as one for this term.
You?
Yes. Monitors see that the rules are kept, and they help Rita and William at each weekly meeting.
What's the weekly meeting?
It's a kind of school parliament. At each meeting, we put into the money box any money we have had that week.
What? I have a lot of money. I shan't do that. What a mad idea.
Actually, it's a very good idea. It doesn't do for 1 or 2 of us to have pounds and pounds to spend, and the rest of us only 1 or 2. That's not fair.
I think it's quite fair.
Well, it isn't. We all put our money in, and then we are all given £2 a week to spend as we like.
Only £2?
If you badly want some more, you have to tell the head boy and girl, and they decide whether you can have it or not.
Don't the headmistresses have a say in anything?
Only if we ask them. They like us to make our own rules, plan our own punishments, and give our own rewards. As a monitor, I shall have the power to judge you.
The very idea of a tomboy like you judging me.
Arabella stormed out of the room and slammed the door. Elizabeth grinned as she put on her dark blue and yellow school uniform. Soon the car arrived to take them to catch the train. Miss Ranger, Elizabeth's form mistress, was at the station waiting to escort the children back to school. Elizabeth introduced Arabella, then went off to join her friends. One of the exciting things about a new term is, are there any new children? What are they like? Whose form will they be in? Apart from Arabella, there were 3 more, 2 of them boys, 1 a girl. One of the new boys was called Julian Holland. He was the untidiest person Elizabeth had ever seen. He had long black hair that fell in a wild lock over his forehead, and his eyes were a deep green. He looked very clever and could imitate all sorts of noises marvellously. The other boy, Martin Follett, was quite different. Clean, neat and tidy. His eyes had a wide, innocent expression. Elizabeth liked him. The new girl was Rosemary Wing. She had a pretty face with a smiling mouth and was very shy. Miss Ranger, the form mistress, soon sized up the new children and talked them over with Mamselle, the French mistress.
Julian is a lazy boy. A pity. I'm sure he has a wonderful brain. He can make simply anything with his hands.
Oh, that Julian. I do not like him. Always he makes some extraordinary noise.
Well, he hasn't tried any noises on me yet, but I dare say he will.
Yesterday in class there was a noise like a lost kitten. For 10 minutes I looked for it, but it was that boy Julian doing his muse.
Thanks for the tip. Now, that Arabella, a silly empty-headed doll. I hope we can make something out of her.
Oh, she is not bad, that one. She has lived in France and speaks French well. It is pleasant to see one with manners as good as Arabella's.
What do you think of Martin and Rosemary?
Oh, the sweet children. Little Martin. He is so good. He tries so hard.
Well, I'm not so sure about him. Rosemary is all right, but she's a weak little thing. I hope she'll make the right friends.
So the teachers sized up their new children, and the older children sized them up too. Julian was an enormous success, a real daredevil with the most extraordinary gifts. He asked Elizabeth to be friends, and she thought it would be fun. It was fun, but it brought a lot of trouble too. Arabella and the other children waited with much interest for the first school meeting. They wondered what it would be like.
It sounds a good idea.
I think so too, Martin.
Stupid idea, I think, Rosemary.
Right, Arabella. I don't care what it says or does. As long as I can do what I like, I am quite willing to let others do what they like too.
Oh, Julian, you'd hate it if someone broke one of the things you're always making, or told tales about you.
Anyone can tell tales as much as they like, Kathleen.
You're a funny boy, Julian. You're either terribly stupid in class or terribly bright.
Why? What did he do that was so bright, Jenny?
Well, Joan, we were having mental arithmetic, and usually Julian gets everything wrong. Well, for some strange reason, he answered every question right, straight off.
Yes, and at the next maths lesson, he wouldn't answer a thing.
You ought to make some of your noises in Miss Ranger's class, Julian. It would be fun.
No, she's watching out for them. You wait. I'll give you some fun one day soon.
Elizabeth was proud at the first school meeting as she sat on the platform with the other monitors. When she was sent round with the big school money box, Elizabeth looked with interest at Arabella. Arabella put in a £10 note and 2 separate pound coins. She did not look at Elizabeth.
Now, are there any requests for extra money?
William, we could do with a new small barrow for the garden. Some younger children are helping me this term, and the old barrow is much too heavy for them.
Sorry, John. I think we'd better wait and see if they go on helping first.
Well, I do think they're very keen.
Has anyone anything to say about a new barrow?
Yes, Rita, I'll make one for them. I can easily find what I need in the shed.
Let Julian do it, William. He's awfully clever at making things.
Very well. Thank you for your offer, Julian. If that's all, we'll now close the meeting.
All the new children settled down as the days went on. Julian was very well liked, but Arabella was not. She would make friends with no one but the meek little Rosemary. When Arabella complained about having to put all her money in the box, Rosemary sympathised with her. But Arabella had not put in all her money. She had kept £5 for herself. One day, the two girls went to the village shops together. Rosemary went to the post office, and Arabella went on a spending spree. A pound of peppermint chocolates, a jar of barley sugar, and a book she wanted. On the way back to school, she offered Rosemary a chocolate, then hid the rest of the bag in her pocket. That evening, Arabella walked into the common room and put her new book on the table. Jenny picked it up.
Oh, Arabella, I've always wanted to read that book. Lend it to me, will you?
I haven't read it myself yet. I only bought it this afternoon.
Gosh, it's a £3 book. How could you buy that with only £2?
I got it cheap.
Oh, did you?
Did you buy any sweets, Jenny?
Yes, Julian, some boiled sweets. They're the best bargain.
I think the best bargain of all is chocolate peppermints.
You idiot! They're very expensive.
They're not. Arabella, show them the enormous bag you got today.
Don't be silly. I only got a few. I'll go and get them and show you.
Could you have made a mistake, Rosemary?
Well, I thought, Arabella's back.
There. 6 in the bag. All I got for my money.
Jenny grinned to herself. Arabella must think they were all stupid, when silly little Rosemary had given the secret away. She wondered where Arabella could have hidden the rest of the chocolates. She thought she knew. Arabella learnt music and had a big music case. Jenny had seen her go to it that afternoon, although she had neither lesson nor practice to do. Why? Jenny slipped off to the music room and peeped inside Arabella's music case. The chocolate peppermints were there. Jenny told the others. They were really disgusted. They would show Arabella just what they thought of her. Arabella had turned up her nose at the boys and girls of Whiteleaf School from the first day she had arrived. She had told Rosemary that she didn't care whether they liked her or not. But it was different now they seemed to despise her. Julian held his nose every time he came near Arabella. Jennifer was a very good mimic. Her way of teasing Arabella was to talk in a very smooth, polite voice, exactly like Arabella's. Everyone seemed to have their own way of teasing Arabella, and she just couldn't understand why. She took Rosemary to one side and told her to find out. When Arabella was next out of the room, Rosemary found courage enough to speak to Jenny.
Why are you so nasty to Arabella?
Because she deserves it.
Why?
Because she's a stuck-up, deceitful creature. She kept money from the school box and spent it on herself, then told lies about it.
Yes, that was bad. Oh dear, is that why you're so horrid to her?
Well, she must know why we are. She's not as stupid as all that, surely.
Rosemary did not like to tell Arabella the real reason why the others were teasing her, so she said that it was just because they were being horrid. Arabella was furious. She would make a complaint at the next meeting.
Right, that's the money business settled. Now, any complaints?
Please, William, I have a very serious complaint to make.
What is your complaint, Arabella?
Well, ever since I've been to this school, the children in my class, all except Rosemary, have been horrid to me. I can't tell you the things they do to me.
You must tell me.
Julian is the worst. He holds his nose whenever he comes near me. And Jenny mimics me and mocks me whenever she can. I'm very unhappy. I shall write to my mother. I shall...
Be quiet now and sit down. But wait a minute. Have you told your monitor about this?
No, she doesn't like me either.
Oh. Well now, let me see. Jenny, will you please explain your unkind behaviour? and tell us if you have any real reason for it.
Arabella brought all this on herself. She didn't keep the rules and we knew it. And so we didn't like her and we teased her.
Oh, you storyteller, I have kept the rules.
Arabella, be quiet. Who is Arabella's monitor? Oh, you are Elizabeth. Will you tell us if Arabella has kept the rules?
Elizabeth doesn't know what we know. We know the deceitful and dishonest thing that Arabella did, but Elizabeth doesn't.
What have you to complain of about Arabella, Jenny?
Arabella didn't put all her money into the box last week. We know because she bought a £3 book and a lot of expensive chocolates.
Go on.
She hid some in her music case so that we wouldn't know. She told lies about them too.
I see. Sit down, Jenny.
Arabella, what have you to say to this? Is it true?
Yes, some of it is true, but not all. You see, I didn't quite understand about putting all my money in. I wanted to ask my monitor, Elizabeth, about lots of things, but she seems to dislike me too.
That's nonsense. Elizabeth would always tell you anything. You have behaved very foolishly. You will have to put things right. You will go to your monitor after this meeting and give her all the money you have got, every penny.
Arabella sat down. Give her money to Elizabeth? Oh dear, how she would hate that. Elizabeth went to find Jenny. She wanted to know why Jenny had not told her about Arabella. Jenny apologised. They had not told Elizabeth because they knew Arabella had been staying with her and thought it might be awkward if Arabella was a friend of hers. Later, Elizabeth asked Julian the same question, but he only teased her about being a goody-goody monitor. Really, Julian was most annoying at times. Elizabeth slowly began to get used to the idea that, as a monitor, she was set over others. In fact, she sometimes forgot about it altogether. She was reminded of it when Rosemary came to her in trouble.
Elizabeth, can I speak to you about something?
Of course.
Well, I keep missing money.
Missing money? What do you mean? Losing it?
Well, I did think I was losing it at first. I thought I must have a hole in my pocket, but I haven't. I missed 50 pence last week, and yesterday a whole pound went out of my desk.
But Rosemary, you don't think anybody took your money, do you?
Well, I do. I hate to say anything, Elizabeth. I really do.
This is awful. It's stealing, Rosemary. Are you quite sure of what you say?
Yes. Shall I make a complaint at the next meeting?
No. I may be able to settle it myself.
All right.
We'll lay a trap. Don't tell anyone else.
Well, I did tell Martin Follett. I was looking all over the place for my pound yesterday, and he came in. He helped me for ages, and he offered me 50 pence of his own, but I haven't told anyone else.
Well, don't. I must say it was kind of Martin.
He's very generous to everybody.
Elizabeth set her trap. She showed everyone the fine new pound she got out of the school box last week. She secretly marked it with a small cross in Indian ink. Then she put it in her desk in front of everyone. The pound was still there after tea that day, so she decided to leave it there until the next morning. Next morning, before school, Elizabeth slipped along to the classroom. The pound had gone. So, there was a thief in the class. Who was it? Well, wait till she saw the marked pound, and then she would know. It was one thing to mark a coin so that she would know it again when she saw it, but another thing to make a plan to find it in someone's keeping. Her chance soon came. That evening, in the common room, Kathleen got out her spinning game. Seeing the top spinning gave Elizabeth an idea.
Let's all see if we can spin coins. Who is the best at it?
I'll spin my pound on top of a glass. Fetch a glass, someone.
Here you are.
Now watch and listen.
Oh, it's ringing. Oh, let me try. Oh, blow. It's fallen on the floor. It's beside you, Elizabeth. Give it to me.
Come on, Elizabeth. Hand over the pound. Anyone would think you'd never seen a pound before the way you're staring at it.
Elizabeth threw the pound across to Kathleen. Her hand was trembling. Julian! Julian had her pound with the black cross on it. She could hardly wait for the chance to speak to him alone. Just before bedtime, her chance came. Elizabeth met Julian in the passage.
Julian, where did you get your nice bright pound from?
From the school box last week. Why?
Julian, are you sure?
Of course I am, you idiot. Where else can we get money from? What are you looking so upset about? What's the matter with my pound?
Nothing's the matter with your pound.
All right then, don't look so peculiar. It's my pound, out of the school box, and that's that.
Julian stalked off, looking puzzled and annoyed. Elizabeth's mind was in a complete muddle. Surely it couldn't be Julian. The next day, Rosemary came to Elizabeth again. Someone had taken 50 pence from Arabella's Mac pocket and some chocolate from Belinda's desk. The next thing that disappeared was sweets out of Elizabeth's locker. If only she knew who had taken them. In class that afternoon, Julian sneezed. He pulled a hanky out of his pocket and something fell out. It was a sweet, one of Elizabeth's sweets. She was sure then he must have taken the pound too. The more Elizabeth thought about the stolen money and sweets, the angrier she felt with Julian. It must be Julian, but how could he do such a thing? Elizabeth knew that she must talk to Julian, and after tea she went to find him. He was by the stables.
Julian, I want to talk to you. It's very important.
What is it, Elizabeth?
Julian, why did you take that money? And my sweets?
What money? And what sweets?
Don't pretend you don't know. You took my pound. And you must have taken Rosemary's money too. And I saw one of my sweets drop out of your pocket this afternoon.
Elizabeth, how dare you say these things to me?
I dare because I'm a monitor. And I know all about your meanness. You called yourself my friend. And...
Well, I like that. You call yourself my friend, and yet you say these hateful things to me.
You've got to listen to me, Julian. Do you want all this brought out at the next meeting?
If you dare to say anything to anyone else, I'll pay you out in a way you won't like.
Julian, I don't want to bring it up at the next meeting. That's why I'm giving you the chance of telling me, so that I can help you and put things right. You always say you do as you like, so I suppose...
Elizabeth, I do as I like, but there are many things I don't like. I don't like stealing, I don't like lying, and I don't like tale-telling, so I don't do those things. Now I'm going. You're my worst enemy now, not my best friend.
Oh, Julian, wait!
Elizabeth, I couldn't help hearing. I didn't like to come out and interrupt.
Martin, you're not to say a word to anyone about this. Do you promise?
I do, but let me help a bit. I'll give you some of my sweets and £1 to make up for the one you lost. That will put things right. Then you needn't bring the matter up at the meeting.
Martin, it's very kind of you, but it won't put things right. It won't stop Julian taking what isn't his. Just promise not to tell anyone about this.
Of course I promise. You can trust me, Elizabeth.
Everyone soon noticed that Julian and Elizabeth were no longer friends. Elizabeth looked thoroughly miserable and upset, and Julian took no notice at all. Arabella was pleased. She wondered what had happened.
I do wish we could find out, Rosemary.
What do you want to find out?
Oh, Martin. We were wondering why Elizabeth and Julian have quarrelled. Have you any idea?
Well, I do know something.
Tell us.
It's a dead secret. You mustn't tell anyone at all. Promise?
Of course. Who told you, Martin?
Elizabeth.
Then you can tell us. If Elizabeth told you, then she will be sure to tell the others too.
Well, Elizabeth accused Julian of doing all the stealing. He was furious and denied it, of course.
Oh, how unkind of Elizabeth. I'm sure that however don't care-ish Julian is, he is honest.
Soon the secret was all over the form. When Arabella said that Julian should know that Elizabeth had spread the tale about him, Rosemary felt uncomfortable. She knew how much Arabella had told, and she knew too that Arabella had added to the story. Arabella told Julian the next day. He was hurt and angry, and the only thing he wanted to do was to get back at Elizabeth and hurt her. And so he did. He invented a curious little gadget like a spring, which slowly unwound, then suddenly sprang wide open. Next day in class, Julian, who sat just in front of Elizabeth, slipped the gadget under the pile of books on Elizabeth's desk. After about 5 minutes, the spring gave a final twist, sprang open, and Elizabeth's books fell to the floor. Elizabeth couldn't understand it. Miss Ranger jumped and crossly told Elizabeth to be more careful. Twice more Julian played the same trick. Miss Ranger lost her temper.
Elizabeth, go out of the room. Once might have been an accident, even twice, but not 3 times. You're a monitor and should know how to behave.
Elizabeth went out of the room, and then, how dreadful! Who should come by but Rita?
Why are you here, Elizabeth? I was sent out of the room, Rita. But it was for something that wasn't my fault. Don't let it happen again, Elizabeth. You are a monitor and should set an example to the others. I'm not very pleased with various things I've heard about you in the first form this term.
The next trick Julian thought of was most extraordinary. He mixed up various chemicals together and made them into wet little pellets. He brushed them with a liquid which would make them swell and burst, letting out a large drop of water. Before afternoon school, he slipped into the empty classroom and, climbing on a desk, he stuck them to the ceiling above Elizabeth's place.
Now, you will all say your verbs. Julien, you will start with the verb to speak.
Je parle, tu parles, il parle, nous parlons.
Oh!
What is the matter, Elizabeth?
A drop of water fell on my head.
Elizabeth, you do not expect me to believe that.
But I felt it.
Silence! Julien, continue.
Nous parlons, vous parlez.
Oh!
Elizabeth! Once more, you interrupt. Do not tell me again it is raining on your head.
Well, Mademoiselle, it is.
Silence! Elizabeth, a monitor should not behave like this.
But, Mademoiselle, honestly, it's very odd.
Enough! You will ask me next if you can have an umbrella. Silence! I do not make a joke. Elizabeth, leave my class.
Oh, please, Mademoiselle. No, I won't interrupt again.
Well, one more word from you and you will go.
Elizabeth thankfully sat down. After class, some of the children told her what a great joke they thought it was. Elizabeth denied it angrily. The children went off. They all thought Elizabeth had played a joke, but they also thought she should own up to it, and they said so amongst themselves. Poor Elizabeth! She knew the children were whispering about her, and she couldn't do anything about it. The next school meeting came and went without anything being said by Elizabeth. She was so puzzled that she made up her mind to say nothing, at least for the present. Meanwhile, Arabella was soon to have a birthday. Mrs. Buckley had told Arabella that she could order whatever she liked to eat and drink from one of the big London stores. Arabella had an idea. They would have a midnight feast. They would ask everyone, except Elizabeth. The children discussed where they should hide the food and drink. Julian said he would hide the biscuits in an old games locker in the passage. It was never used, so no one would find them. Arabella's birthday came. The children wished her a happy birthday and gave her little presents. Quite by chance, Elizabeth opened the old games locker, hunting for a lacrosse ball. She stared in surprise at the bag of biscuits. She guessed Miss Ranger had put them there and thought no more about it. The midnight feast was held in the common room by candlelight. All the children had crept down from their beds without waking anyone. The food and drink was collected from the hiding places, and Julian went to get the biscuits. As he groped his way along the darkened passage, he walked into a chair and knocked it over with a crash. The noise woke Elizabeth. She slipped out of bed and went out into the passage. She heard a creak as someone opened the lid of the old games locker. She walked softly up to the locker, switched on her torch very suddenly, and made Julian almost jump out of his skin.
Julian, what are you doing here? Oh, you rotten thief! You're stealing biscuits now. Put them back at once.
Shh! You'll wake everyone, you idiot!
Well, I've really caught you this time, with the stolen goods in your hand. You can't deny that. Give them to me.
No! Oh, the lid! Idiot! Now you've woken everyone!
The crash of the locker lid certainly had awakened a good many people. The mistresses would soon be on the scene. Julian fled to warn the others. Elizabeth did not know where he had gone, so she ran back to her own dormitory, excited to think that she really had caught Julian in the very act of stealing biscuits. As soon as Julian warned the other children, they blew out the candles and fled. By the time Miss Ranger went into the dormitory, not a sound was to be heard. All the children seemed to be sleeping peacefully. Julian thought of a way to pay back Elizabeth for spoiling the fun of the night before. He put sneezing powder between the pages of Elizabeth's French book. He told the others, and they were delighted. This was a joke after their own hearts.
Now, class, open your books at lesson 3. You will read the passage for 10 minutes to yourselves.
Achoo! Achoo! Achoo!
Elizabeth!
Sorry. Achoo! I can't stop. Achoo! Help it! Achoo!
Enough, Elizabeth! Achoo. You will sneeze no more.
Achoo! Achoo!
Elizabeth! Last week it was drops falling on your head. This week it is sneezes. I will not have it.
Achoo! Sorry, Mademoiselle. Achoo!
Elizabeth, you are a monitor and you behave like this. I will not have it. Leave the room and do not come back.
But, oh, Mademoiselle, please. Achoo! Achoo!
Out, I say!
Elizabeth stood outside the door, puzzled as to why she had sneezed so much. And then, to her horror, William, the head boy, came along.
Elizabeth, surely you haven't been sent out of the room again. Are you forgetting you're a monitor?
No, I'm not, William. Mademoiselle sent me out because I couldn't stop sneezing.
Well, you're not sneezing now.
I know. I stopped as soon as I came out here.
Very odd.
William walked on, not convinced. The children filed into the big hall for the usual school meeting that night.
Any complaints?
Yes, Rita. I have a very serious complaint to make about Julian. I have thought for some time that he was taking things that didn't belong to him. And yesterday I caught him at it. He was taking them out of the old games locker in the passage.
Elizabeth, this is a terrible charge you're making. Unless you really have proof, you had better say no more.
I have got proof. I saw Julian take some biscuits out of the locker. I don't know who they belong to.
Stand up, Julian, and tell us your side of the story.
I'm sorry, William, but I can't give any explanation, because I should give away a secret belonging to others. I was certainly taking the biscuits, but not stealing them.
You see, William, he can't give you any explanation.
Be quiet, Elizabeth. Now, first formers, if any of you can help clear Julian of this very serious charge, you will do so, secret or not.
William, we did have a secret. It was my birthday yesterday, and we thought we'd have a midnight feast.
Go on.
We had to hide things. We didn't tell Elizabeth, because she's a monitor and might have tried to stop us. Well, Julian hid my biscuits in the games locker, and he went to get them after midnight. It's jolly mean of Elizabeth to accuse Julian of stealing them. She's done that before.
Elizabeth, it seems that you have done a most unforgivable thing. You have accused Julian publicly of something he hasn't done. Now we hear that this is not the only time you have accused Julian. As you were wrong this time, it is likely that the other times were wrong too.
I'm very sorry about what I said, William. I didn't know.
That isn't any excuse. We made you a monitor at the end of last term, but you have let us down. Twice you have been sent out of your classroom for playing foolish tricks. This is not the behaviour of a monitor, Elizabeth. You must step down and leave us to choose someone else in your place.
This was too much for Elizabeth. She gave an enormous sob and rushed out of the room. One person was feeling uncomfortable about the result of the meeting. It was Julian. He knew it was because of his tricks she had been sent out of the classroom. Partly because of his tricks, Elizabeth had lost the honour of being a monitor. Miss Bell and Miss Best had been present at the meeting, and afterwards they told William and Rita to speak to Elizabeth as soon as possible. There was clearly something puzzling happening. Rita sent Nora to find Elizabeth and tell her to come to William's study at once.
Come in.
Sit down, Elizabeth.
Rita, I'm terribly sorry for being wrong about Julian. I did think I was right.
That's what we want to see you about. We want you to tell us what made you feel so strongly against Julian.
Well, Rosemary complained to me about her money going missing. Arabella lost some too. I set a trap with a marked £1, and the next time I saw it, Julian had it. I lost some sweets, and saw one fall out of Julian's pocket when he took his hanky out.
You are quite sure about these things?
Yes, William. It's because of all these things I jumped to the idea that Julian was stealing the biscuits.
Elizabeth, why did you think you could put matters right yourself? You should have come straight to us and let us deal with it.
Oh, I thought that as I was a monitor, I could settle things myself, without worrying you at the meeting.
Elizabeth, you thought you could settle a matter that even Miss Bell and Miss Best might find difficult. You do make things as hard for yourself as possible, don't you?
Yes, I'm afraid I do.
I think we had better get Julian here and tell him all that Elizabeth has said. If Julian didn't take these things, there is something peculiar about the matter. We must find out what it is.
Julian came at once. William told Julian everything that Elizabeth had said. Julian looked surprised and puzzled.
I see now why Elizabeth thought I was a thief. Did I really have the marked £1? I certainly never put a sweet of Elizabeth's in my pocket. I believe I've still got that £1. Yes, here it is.
That's the cross I marked.
You know, now I come to think of it, I didn't have a bright new £1 out of the box that week. Someone must have put this new coin into my pocket. But why?
And someone must have put one of Elizabeth's sweets into your pocket too. Does anyone dislike you very much, Julian?
Well, Elizabeth hates me, but I'm sure she wouldn't do a thing like that.
Oh, Julian, of course I wouldn't. I don't hate you. I'm more sorry than I can say about everything that has happened. You'll never forgive me, I know.
I have forgiven you, but I don't like you very much. However, there is something I'd like to own up to now.
Oh, what is that, Julian?
It wasn't Elizabeth's fault that she was sent out of the classroom twice. Elizabeth, I played some tricks on you. I put springs under your books. I stuck wet pellets on the ceiling. And I put sneezing powder in the pages of your French book.
Julian? Oh, Julian, how funny! Oh dear, it all seems so funny when I look back and remember how puzzled I was.
You're a real little sport, Elizabeth, and I like you all over again. Friends?
Oh, yes.
Now, Elizabeth, did you tell anyone about your suspicions of Julian?
Not a word.
Well, I didn't say anything, yet the whole form knew and told me about it.
Only one other person knew, and that was Martin Follett. He overheard our conversation. He promised not to tell anyone.
He must have told everyone, the little sneak. Well, thanks, William and Rita, for having us along and making us see sense.
Julian and Elizabeth went down the passage to their common room. Julian sensed that Elizabeth did not want to appear alone in front of all the first form. Inside the common room, the first formers had been talking about Elizabeth and saying that it served her right to be punished.
I shall tell Julian what I think of Elizabeth. I never did like her.
I must say, I think it was a pity that Elizabeth accused Julian without being certain.
I expect she was feeling annoyed because she'd been left out of my party, so she got back at Julian like that.
No, Elizabeth does do silly things, but she isn't spiteful.
Well, I shan't speak a word to her. She's been unkind to Julian.
Shh, here she comes.
Julian, we all feel sorry to think of what you had to face at the meeting. It was too bad.
You must feel very sorry about it. I should.
I did, but I don't now. Come on, Elizabeth. We've still got 10 minutes before bedtime. I'll play a game of double patience with you. Where are the cards?
In my locker.
What's come over you, Julian? Don't you know Elizabeth is your worst enemy?
You're wrong, Arabella. She is my best friend. Everything was a silly mistake.
Thanks, Julian.
Things were not easy for Elizabeth the next few days. She worked hard, was very quiet, and her merry laugh did not sound nearly so often. Julian thought of a plan to make her her old happy self. Science lessons were very dull that term. Julian would make lots of his funny noises during the lesson, but all the children must pretend they couldn't hear anything odd. The trick worked beautifully. Mr. Leslie, the science master, kept hearing strange noises, but nobody else could. In the end, it was too much for poor Mr. Leslie. Muttering something about not feeling well, he fled out of the classroom. Peals of laughter filled the room from end to end. Those gusts of laughter cleared the air of all spitefulness, scorn and enmity. Everyone suddenly felt friendly and warm. Julian's success in Mr. Leslie's class rather went to his head. He began to make noises and play tricks during all the lessons, and he became quite a hero in the school. But he was not a hero to the teachers. They often talked of him, sometimes angrily, sometimes sadly, regretting the waste of a brilliant brain. At the next school meeting, the little girl, no longer a monitor, got up to speak.
I just want to say that I know I was completely wrong about Julian. I have said so to him, and he has been very nice about it.
Thank you, Elizabeth. But I have something else to say to Julian, something not quite so pleasant. Julian, all your teachers are displeased with you. It is because you only use your brains to play the fool in class. According to everyone, you have wonderful brains. Brains that could do something for the world.
Oh, I don't care whether I'm famous or not. All this goody-goody talk doesn't mean a thing to me.
I can see that. It's a pity. One day you will learn differently, but what will teach you I don't know. I'm afraid it will be something that will hurt you badly.
The weeks went on, and soon half-term came near. The children began to talk about their parents coming. Julian's eyes shone when he spoke of his mother. It was clear that he loved her better than anything on earth. Half-term came at last. Mrs. Allen came, and Elizabeth gave her a great hug.
Hello, Mummy.
Oh, you're looking well, darling.
Oh, there's Julian. Hi, Julian. Has your mother come yet?
No, she hasn't.
Hello, Whiteleaf School. Oh, I see. Yes, I'll tell him. Goodbye. Ah, Julian, I wish to talk to you.
I wonder what... Oh, Julian looks awful. Julian, what's the matter?
Go away!
Miss Ranger, what's the matter with Julian?
It's his mother. She's desperately ill.
Oh, I'm sorry. Mummy, I can't come out. I must stay with Julian.
Of course. I do understand, dear. Now you just run along.
Julian was nowhere to be seen. Harry told Elizabeth that he'd seen him tearing down to the school gates. Elizabeth rushed down to the gates too. In the distance, hurrying fast, was Julian. Elizabeth tore after him. When she caught up, he was in a telephone kiosk, talking earnestly into the phone. At last, he came out.
Julian, who are you phoning?
My father. Miss Ranger said I wasn't to worry him, but I had to speak to him.
What did your father say?
He said Mother had got just a tiny chance.
Julian, doctors are so clever these days. They'll do something to save her. You'll see.
My father's a doctor. He said they're trying a new drug on Mother that he and 2 other doctors have been working on for years. He says it's the last hope.
Julian, your father must be very clever. You must take after him in brains. One day, you might be able to save the life of someone you love by using a great invention of your own.
If my father's drug does save my mother's life, it will be because of his years of hard work. I thought he was silly to work as hard as he did. I've been given brains too, and I've wasted them. William said something would teach me a lesson sooner or later.
I do think if you've got the gift of good brains, you can be very happy using them for other people. This isn't goody-goody talk.
I know. It's wise and sensible talk. Oh, why didn't I show Mother what I could do? Now it's too late.
It isn't. You know your mother has a chance. Whatever happens, Julian, you can still use your brains. You could be anything you liked.
I shall be a surgeon. I shall find new ways of curing people.
You will, Julian. You will.
They walked back to the school, and on the way they passed a small country church. The door was open. Julian asked Elizabeth to wait while he went inside. He wished to make a solemn promise that was going to last all his life. The children were upset to hear of Julian's trouble. Strangely enough, Martin seemed the most upset. This was odd, because Julian had never liked Martin and had not troubled to hide it. Martin went to Elizabeth, looking very distressed.
I want to ask your advice about something, Elizabeth.
Well, don't. I'm not a monitor anymore.
Please let me tell you.
Honestly, I shan't be able to help you.
I don't want you to help me. I just want to get it off my chest.
All right.
I took all that money. And I took the sweets.
You thief! You made yourself out to be so kind and generous. And all the time you were a deceitful thief. Did you put the marked pound and sweet into Julian's pocket?
Yes, I did. I never liked Julian, because he never liked me. I was afraid that if I was found out, none of you would like me. And I so badly wanted to be liked. Hardly anyone likes me.
I don't wonder. Think of all the damage you've done. You made me accuse poor Julian, and I lost my position as a monitor. Martin Follett, I think you're the nastiest, hatefullest boy I've ever met.
Elizabeth gave Martin a scornful glance, got up and went out to the music room to practice. While she was playing, Rosemary wandered in. She had just seen Martin and thought he looked awful. It was such a pity, she felt, because he was such a kind and generous boy, offering people money if they had lost theirs, never eating sweets, only keeping them to give away. Poor Martin. When Rosemary went off, Elizabeth began to think hard about what she had said. How could Martin be mean and yet generous? It didn't seem to make sense. She thought about it for some time. Then something happened that made her forget. It was in the middle of the arithmetic class. A maid came in and said there was a telephone call for Julian. He leapt up and rushed out. The whole class sat silently waiting. Then came the sound of footsteps down the passage. The door was flung open and Julian came in, smiling broadly.
It's good news! It's all right!
Hooray!
Yes!
Oh, good.
Is your mother better?
Much better, Miss Ranger. Gosh, I don't know how I'm going to do any more lessons this morning.
Well, there are only 5 minutes left before break. So off you go. All of you.
Oh, good.
Yes.
Thank you, Miss Ranger. Thanks, Miss Ranger.
Yes.
Oh, Julian, it's marvellous. Are you happy again now?
Happier than I've ever felt before. I've been given another chance. I'm going to use my brains in a way they've never been used before.
Julian, don't give up being funny, will you? You'll want a bit of rest from hard work sometimes.
The excitements of the day were a bit too much for Elizabeth. She lay in bed that night and could not get to sleep. She began to think about the puzzle of Martin again. Suddenly, Elizabeth thought of William's big book, in which was written the account of every school meeting. In it were stories of difficult children and how they had been helped to cure themselves. Elizabeth took her torch and crept downstairs. She took the big book from the drawer in the judge's table. Turning the pages, she found the story of a girl who also took money and didn't spend any of it on herself. She gave it away as fast as she stole it. It was all because nobody liked her, so she tried to buy their friendship by giving them things. Elizabeth wondered if Martin did the same. Next morning, Elizabeth spoke to Martin.
Martin, why do you give away the things you steal?
Because I want people to like me. You can't make people like you unless you're kind and generous. It's the same sort of thing that Robin Hood did.
No, it isn't. It's stealing, and you know it is.
I don't know what to do.
Own up at the next meeting and say that you put the blame on Julian. That's what you should do.
School went happily on. A lacrosse match was played and Elizabeth was in it. Julian and Robert were playing too. It was a home match, so the whole school turned out to watch it. It was an exciting match. Elizabeth scored the winning goal and Whiteleaf School went mad. The first formers crowded round Elizabeth, cheering her and patting her on the back. The two teams went in and had a most enormous tea. It was all great fun. Nobody felt like doing prep that night. The children looked at Julian, trying to make him start something. But Julian remembered his promise made in the little country church. He put his hands over his ears and began to work. Work was easy to Julian. He could easily beat the others if he tried. At the end of the first week of trying, he was top of the form. Only Martin did badly that week, even worse than Arabella. He was worried. He wished he had not told Elizabeth his secret. She had said such hard things to him, things he couldn't forget. The next school meeting came. The meeting opened as usual. The money was given out. Then William asked if there were any requests. One small boy said his guinea pig cage had fallen over and broken. Could he have the money for a new one? Before William could answer, Julian stood up.
I'll mend it, William. It won't take me long.
Thank you, Julian. There isn't much money in the box at the moment. Now, any complaints?
Oh, that's good. Not one.
Well, there's nothing much to say this week, except I'm sure the whole school will like to know that Julian is top of his form this week, instead of bottom. Keep it up, Julian. Right, you may all go.
Please, William, I've got something to say.
Sit down again, everybody. What do you want to say, Martin? Speak up.
Well, I took that money and all the other things, and I put that £1 in the sweet in Julian's pocket so that nobody would think it was me.
But why did you steal, Martin?
I don't know.
Rita, I understand about Martin. There's a real reason. It wasn't just badness.
What do you mean, Elizabeth?
Martin only took things from people so that he might give them away. He never kept them for himself.
That's quite true.
William, there's a bit about the same sort of thing in our big book. A girl who was just the same.
Show me, Elizabeth.
There, on this page.
How did you know it was here?
Well, Martin told me all he'd done, and I was puzzled. I wondered if there was anything about that kind of thing in a book. So I looked, and there it was.
Stealing is always wrong, but Martin did it for a different reason, to buy friendship. He took things to give them away, but they were not his to give.
It was stealing just the same.
I want to go away from Whiteleaf. I shall never do any good here now.
You can't run away from yourself. Now you see that what you did was bad, you can put it right. That's the end of it.
What do you mean, that's the end of it?
That's the end of taking what doesn't belong to you in order to buy friendship. You won't steal again.
No, I won't. I felt so guilty and ashamed.
Good. You must pay back each week any money you have stolen, and you must buy sweets to give back to those you took them from. That's only fair.
Yes, I will.
And we'll give him a chance to be friendly.
Seems to me as if Elizabeth is a much better monitor when she isn't one than when she is.
The meeting broke up at last. Martin went straight to Julian and apologised. The days went swiftly by, days of work and play. One day, when they had an hour and a half free time, Julian suggested to Elizabeth that they should go for a nature walk, over the hills and down to the lake. That afternoon, the two set off together. When they reached the edge of the lake, Elizabeth was feeling rather tired and sat down. Julian went off to find a special kind of moss. Julian disappeared. A few minutes later, a little boy came running down to the water's edge. Elizabeth could hear him playing about, and then she heard a loud splash.
Michael! Michael! Oh, have you seen a little boy anywhere? Did I hear a scream?
I think he's fallen in the water. Can he swim?
No! Oh, no! Oh, he'll be drowned! Let's get help quickly!
I'll go in and get him.
Elizabeth waded out. Suddenly the sandy bottom fell away and she had to swim. She caught hold of the sinking child and pulled him towards her. As Elizabeth swam towards the shore, towing the boy, he suddenly slipped from her hands and went under. He caught in some weeds and did not float to the top. Elizabeth dived down. She got hold of his leg and pulled hard. The child came out of the weeds. He was no longer struggling. Elizabeth thought in horror that he had drowned. She dragged him to the shore.
Oh, he's not breathing!
Work his arms up and down. That will bring the air into his lungs. That's it.
Oh, he's alive! Oh, Michael, why did you run away from me?
You'd better get him home as soon as possible.
Yes, I will. Oh, goodbye.
Elizabeth, whatever have you been doing? You're wet through.
I had to pull a kid out of the water.
Come on home, quick.
Do don't tell anyone, Julian. The others would only tease me.
So Julian said nothing. Nobody knew of the child's rescue, and Elizabeth forgot about it. The next school meeting was held 2 weeks from the end of term. Money was given out as usual, and there were no complaints. It looked as if it was going to be a short meeting. But no! What was this? Miss Bell and Miss Best were actually walking up to the platform. Miss Bell sat down, and Miss Best started to speak to the school.
I have had a letter from a Colonel Helston. This is what he says. Dear Madam, 4 days ago my little son Michael fell into the lake near your school and would have drowned if it had not been for a girl from Whiteleaf. This girl swam to Michael, and with great difficulty, because he was struggling, she brought him ashore. She then showed the nurse how to bring him back to life again. Now, I do not know which girl it was. I would like to know her name so that I can thank her and reward her for a very plucky action. Yours sincerely, Edward Helston. Well, this surprising letter gave me and Miss Bell very great pride and pleasure. I should like to know who this girl is. The whole school should be proud of her.
It was Elizabeth!
Well, so it was Elizabeth. I might have guessed it. Come up on the platform, please, Elizabeth. We would like to give you a reward for your brave deed. Is there anything you would like?
Well, I'd like you to give the school a whole day's holiday, please. There's a big fair soon, and I know everybody would like to go.
Good old Elizabeth.
I think we might say yes to what Elizabeth wants.
Miss Best?
What is it, Julian?
I am speaking for the whole of the first form. We want to know if Elizabeth can be made a monitor again. We all trust her and like her.
Yes, we do. We do.
Elizabeth, do you want to be made a monitor again?
Oh, yes, please. I'll be sensible and wise. I really will.
Yes, I think you will. You shall be a monitor from this very minute.
The meeting closed on a happy note, and the children left the hall.
Oh, I do feel so happy, Julian.
You've a right to. Funny person, aren't you? Naughtiest girl in the school, and best girl in the school. Worst enemy, and best friend. Well, whichever you are, you're always our Elizabeth, and we're proud of you.